Mike, I'm going to start out with some simple things.
Okay.
What is mindset?
I'm going to start out by flipping that around on you, and that's really more for the audience because you have a particular type of audience, and the challenge with the term mindset is it's thrown around in such a way that it's used, I think, indiscriminately, and we all know what we think we mean when we say it, but we don't necessarily explain to others what we mean by that. So it starts meaning different things. And when you occupy the space in which I tend to operate, which is sort of this personal development, mental enhancement space, a lot of people get off the rails very quickly because there's a lot of ambiguity. When we start talking about the mind, it's very difficult to pin all of that down.
Sure.
So in the context of the people that you typically engage with, the people that you teach and are sharing your message with, what do they typically say mindset is? If they come to you and say, hey, I want to work on mindset, or if you're telling them, hey, you maybe need to incorporate more mindset preparation into your preparation, where are they usually coming from? Or where are you even coming from?
No, you're right. There's a lot of people that when they say that, what they mean is, I want to have the mindset that I could do this. So I'm training to do this, this, and this. I'm training physically these tactics, and I'm learning with these tools, and I'm doing this so I can have the right mindset. And that's where you start saying, okay, well, physically doing some motions doesn't mean that you're working on it in there. But I'm super interested in how to get those people that, when I say I know what they mean, I know what their goal is. I have common goals, but we're not going to get there by just physically training.
The interesting thing about the mind is as well as the body, and my premise when we're talking about training is that we're always training the organism in its entirety, this organism. So my training premise is the body is the mind is the body. One does not improve without a correlative improvement in the other. And however, if all you do is train physical things, that's not the most efficient way to train, the mental side. I mean, some of that will sort of get drug along ambiently, if you will, but very few people really make a study of focusing on the mind or really exploring what that would involve. So what I have noticed in my travels throughout sort of the tactical sphere over the years is that mindset, for a lot of people, really is what they use as a term to describe tactics. Mindset is knowing what to do. In my worldview, mindset is different than that. And mindset is actually, I consider a fairly neutral term. Mindset is as specific as the term physique. Everyone has a physique. Their physique is their own. It's unique to them.
Sure.
Their mindset is unique to them. It's just sort of the accumulation of the knowledge base and attitudes, personal beliefs about themselves,
Sure.
about the world, if they have a prevailing belief system, and it's all of those things that sort of are combined. Now, in the self-defense community, I see people talking about the term combat mindset. Got to work on your combat mindset, which for me is an example of how quickly, again, we can sort of get off the rails. You need a combat mindset, Sparky? Really?
Yeah.
What exactly do you envision yourself doing? Life is context specific. Self-defense is context specific, extremely. So the important thing to understand is, mindset is just this kind of bucket that we fill with information, with habits, with attitudes, and we can either fill it deliberately, or we can just kind of let it just filled with the ambient rainwater of whatever just happens to go in there. And if it fills up with dumb stuff or unintended stuff, there's not a lot of room necessarily for intentional things or good things or new things. So mindset is just that generic term. It's not until we throw a descriptor in there or we start trying to quantify mindset in relation to what we're trying to accomplish, say, in making ourselves better prepared that it really starts to take on any meaning. So I'll finish up my mindset soliloquy with an anecdote. In 2002, I was involved in a post 9/11 airline training program. It's for United Airlines, huge program, lots of dollars. And and ultimately my program became the model that was adopted by the FAA, and it's sort of the basis of what the TSA offers throughout the commercial airline community to this day. And with training, training is expensive. The clock is always running to try to fill training time with as much meat, with as much content as possible. So the first thing I did was find out how much time do we have available. And then I started smashing all of this information into that time. And United was such a large company that they had an adult training division that sort of created the production values on any sort of training they did, whether it was for pilots or cabin crews or ground crews, et cetera. So very smart people, and they took all of the how to kill somebody with a coffee pot at 25,000 feet material and sort of made that into slides and manuals and whatnot. And after we sort of had created this piece that was going to be delivered unto just over 20,000 end users within that airline alone, I said, we're not finished. And they said, well, what do you mean by that? I said, well, we are taking a group of people. Okay, now for anyone listening, look for the correlation. We're taking a group of people that are not specifically trained to intervene in incidents of high altitude crime and or terrorism.
Sure.
And we are trying to prepare them in an excruciatingly short period of time to go from being customer service professionals to counterterrorism interventionists.
Yeah, it's a
That's
stretch,
a
isn't it?
huge jump. Okay. Now, the mechanics are the mechanics. Just like within the self-defense community, your CCW people, the mechanics are the mechanics. And how long does it take you to teach the mechanics? Not very long.
Yeah.
But the tricky part is getting into this amorphous thing called mindset. It's the capability or the willingness to do what must be done. And my challenge to the company this was sort of deliberate on my part because I wanted to get as much time as I could for the nuts and bolts,
Sure.
the mechanics. I said, okay, we're not done. We still have to work on the mind. Well, what is it that you mean? I said, well, do you think that your people, and look at who the cabin crew population primarily is, females,
Yep.
or males that gravitate towards that particular profession. It's just a different group of attributes than Mike Gillette,
Yep.
okay, or Ernie. So I said, we need to prepare these people mentally, emotionally, to be able to access these new skills, in the context of how this may actually play out. So I was able to get them to bite off on another piece of training, which was all done pre-classroom.
Sure.
So it was CBT, and it basically walked them through scenarios ahead of time, questions to ask yourself ahead of time, things to consider ahead of time.
Absolutely.
So that at crunch time, and it's the exact same thing that you do when you are teaching any of the variations of self-defense class that you teach or bring in instructors to do. How is easy? When is much more difficult?
Sure.
Or how much, or how much not. So that was one of the early times for me when I was able to devote a specific chunk of time and a specific amount of someone else's money in order to cultivate what is necessary to bring with you into these situations, which is an appropriate mindset, an appropriate frame of reference, so that we are coming into a situation having sort of been conditioned on what to expect.
Sure.
You know, that, yeah, it's going to be chaotic, it's going to be scary. Here's some scenarios that will make that dreadfully apparent.
Yep.
And that ultimately, I think, is why there have been incidents with that airline that have been resolved successfully.